I'm getting the ping on the chat that we can start this. So if everybody's ready, allow me to welcome the attendees and our distinguished panel today. My name is Mott Smith, and I am chair of the Council of Infill Builders, which is the organization that you're looking at right now. We are a nonprofit group made up of real estate practitioners committed to improving California through infill development. And we're kind of a one of a kind organization. We've been around for more than a decade, I believe, Ethan. We're very active both in state and local efforts to make infill more possible and better for all. My day job is I'm CEO of a company called Amped Kitchens, which builds the production complexes of production kitchens in California and outside in other states in the U.S. So the Infill Builders is a membership-based organization, and we encourage everybody here today, if you're not already on our mailing list, please do join the mailing list. If you would like to support the organization and have access to special events for members only, please visit our website, councilofinfillbuilders.org. Today, we're excited about this program about the Freedom West 2.0 project. This is the first of the Infill Builders' new Lunch and Learn series, and the Lunch and Learn series today and beyond will cover a series of topics specifically geared for infill practitioners. And again, I just want to stress how grateful I am to be part of this group and to be here today with this panel, because so much of the content out there is not really geared for practitioners. It's geared for people who are interested in infill but might not have to suffer the slings and arrows of actually doing it. And I know that the panel we have today definitely has suffered some slings and arrows getting many projects done, including this one. And so it's going to be really exciting to talk about, first of all, what this project represents and some of the lessons learned. Also, very important, want to thank our sponsor and Zoom host, Alan Matkins. So thank you, Alan Matkins, for making this event possible today. And finally, I'm going to hand it over to our program moderator, Ethan Elkind of the UC Berkeley School of Law. He'll introduce the program and the speakers. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mott. And thank you definitely to Alan Matkins and for the Council of Infill Builders for organizing this. This is a very exciting panel that we have today. I'm very excited to have these speakers join us and hear about this transformative project, not just for San Francisco, but we believe that this can be a community-based model for real estate development and housing development, more specifically, really all across the country. And it's, I think, a very timely moment, especially given a new presidential administration and a lot of interest in overcoming racial injustice and our housing deficit all across the country. So I think this project, as you'll hear about, helps address both of those challenges that we have in this country, and more specifically in San Francisco. So we're going to hear from Victor McFarlane, who's the chairman and CEO of McFarlane Partners, from Mattie Scott, who's the president of the Freedom West Board of Directors, and last but definitely not least, Landon Taylor, co-founder of Legacy First Partners and a lead advisor to Freedom West Homes Corporation. So we're going to kick it off with presentations from remarks from all three of them. And we also are going to have some time for audience question and answer. So as you're hearing the speakers talk about this project, think of some questions that you want to ask. Feel free to put that in the chat or in the Q&A function, and we'll pick them up for the second half of the discussion today. And of course, we hope you're all enjoying your lunch at home. We wish we were doing this in person, but feel free to eat and learn. That's the whole point of the Lunch and Learn. So with that, let me ask Landon Taylor to kick it off. He, as I mentioned, he's a co-founder of Legacy First Partners and a lead advisor to Freedom West Homes Corporation. He has over 25 years of experience as a business operator, investor, and strategist. But I think more specifically for this particular project and topic, he spent his childhood, ages 7 to 16, as a resident of Freedom West Homes. So this is a very personal project for him and a real commitment to his community, his childhood community. So I think with that perspective brings a lot of interesting insight into the project, and we'll kind of walk through that, the details of the project. Just a little bit more about his background. He has a bachelor's of science and management from Pepperdine University, and has completed executive training courses at both Stanford and Harvard universities. And so he'll discuss some of the history of this project. And Landon, with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure, thanks, Ethan. Well, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. And as Ethan mentioned, I get the esteemed pleasure to serve as the lead advisor to Freedom West Homes Corp to really usher them through the stabilization process and then this plan for revitalization. And the important part, as Ethan stated, is certainly I've spent 20, 30 years in the real estate and technology space, and as well as education. But a lot of that at the First American Corporation. But what is, I think, probably most important is my history living at Freedom West and what it did for me as a young person, and why it's so critical to make sure that we not only save it, revitalize it, and create a national model. So with that said, I think the way that we've planned our walkthrough, as I bring these slides up, I am going to cover the history of this project, the history of Freedom West, what led to creating it, and then bring us up to the top, to the point of us selecting McFarlane Partners as our development partner to build out Freedom West 2.0. I'm going to ask Mattie Scott, the board president, to talk about the importance of the component of economic empowerment and long-term viability for Freedom West and the community overall. And then we'll hand it over to Victor McFarlane, who will talk about the real estate, the challenges that we have for overcoming, and his perspective as we go forward. So I will start with the history. As you can see, the theme that we have is Freedom West: design, build, and empower with equity. That's what guides us. And the history, I think, is important to note as to why that is our lead. Many of you may or may not know that back in the 40s in San Francisco, going into the 50s, redlining was a huge, huge challenge. And in the city, the Fillmore district, where Freedom West is found, was really one of the only places that African Americans were allowed to go move and live. Everywhere else they were discriminated against and could not live there. So now African Americans come, there's the war, there's great jobs in the shipyards, which, by the way, that's where my grandmother worked on the shipyards. And then in the late 60s, the city of San Francisco decided that they would declare the Fillmore community blight and bring forward this concept of urban renewal, and made this commitment to the residents that, look, we're going to demolish homes here, give you a certificate, we're going to ask you to leave, pay you a couple dollars, and you can come back. Well, that was a broken promise. Over 20,000 residents, 20 to 30,000 residents were displaced. Almost none of the African-American families and many Japanese families were able to return. Over 800 businesses were closed. My Aunt Toogie's drugstore was one of those businesses that was closed. And again, they could not come back. So urban renewal wiped out the Fillmore and really had a huge impact relative to the Black population in San Francisco. In the 70s, the population was up around 13%. And as you can see, we go to 1980, 90, 2000, 2016, it is now below 6%. And so that devastation that happened in the Fillmore, really, we've not recovered, if you will. In 1976, a vision came to fruition. Reverend J. Austell Hall of Bethel AME Church said, look, we're going to launch and build Freedom West Homes, a co-op, and bring back at least 382 families who could live in brand new co-op housing, have a place of dignity where they could live, be an owner in the co-op, and in essence, try to rebuild what was lost. That was a great time. There was 25 years of I would say, the glory days, if you will. Unfortunately, 40 years later, because it was not set up for success relative to density, they kept density very low on purpose. Many officials in the city have shared with me that they knew that back then it was on purpose to keep the population of African Americans low in the area. And so there wasn't enough economic strength for it to survive. And so after a lot of deferred maintenance and a broken economic model, some 40 years later, and come 2018, when I got involved, the project was in trouble. And just about really failing financially. And we needed to come in, stabilize, restructure the debt, and really get prepared for redevelopment, or excuse me, revitalization, if you will, and redevelop the property. The only way to do it and to really respect and honor the history and the legacy of that original promise, which was made to the families. By the way, Mattie Scott, you'll hear from her in a moment. She was one of the original families. My family moved in, was one of the original families in 1977. And in order to keep that promise and then build forward for a sustainable future and have a model going forward, we worked with the board of directors 2 years ago with a vision session that said, in order to honor the history and prepare for the future, we need to arrive at what we call non-negotiables that would become the guiding principles that we would then, when we selected a development partner, which ultimately became Victor McFarlane with McFarlane Partners, what would those non-negotiables be? You see them on the screen. Number one, the co-op must remain 100% owned by Freedom West. There were many developers and other outside entities who, of course, wanted this prime land and were recommending, well, let's if we redevelop, let's reduce the amount of co-op members from 382 down to 50 or down to 60. No, the co-op must remain 100% intact, owned by Freedom West, and there needs to be 382 co-ops still in place. Guiding principle or non-negotiable number two is we need to deliver 382 brand new units at a cost of about $1 million. Victor will talk about that, but at no increase to the monthly housing costs. For co-ops, they're called carrying charges, save for a 3% annual inflation increase. We need to make sure they have $1 million value residents and still pay on average about $1,000 a month. That's what the co-op members are paying today. Number three is, and super important, is to have a long-term 40-year economic sustainability model so that Freedom West is never in the same place that it is in today when I came back in 2018, and to be able to subsidize, of course, keeping the cost low permanently for the residents, and even creating an opportunity for grants and subsidies for the community. And that will require additional sources of revenue as a part of the model. And then number four is Freedom West must be involved in the plans, which of course that did not happen back in urban renewal. And so I want to show you this slide that speaks to the economic plan. We were super encouraged. We gave McFarlane Partners the challenge. We said, look, you have to bring the board a plan, a design plan that achieves those non-negotiables, and an economic plan that would achieve those objectives. And what you see on the screen, this is the first time we've ever shared this externally, but I'm sharing it with you. This is what we proposed to the shareholders, because this needed to go before the shareholders for a vote. And I'm happy to say the plan that you're seeing today was voted and approved by the shareholders by more than a 2-to-1 margin. But one of the things that we showed them is the way it's structured, we really aren't able to unlock the value of the land. With the current projections, if we look out to 2026, the operation would continue to lose money. But by unlocking the value of the land, delivering on the 382 brand new co-op replacement units, adding additional affordable rental units by which Freedom West would own outright after a 15-year tax credit period, plus giving them retail space, 20,000 square feet of retail that they would own. Then starting in 2026, we would go from a loss to $2 million in net cash flow. And it would And if the projections work, if our plan works, it would only go up from there. And over the course of a 40-year period, have about $400 million in cash flow over a 40-year horizon. The last thing I'm going to do before introducing Mattie Scott and having her give remarks is share with you a 3-minute video that our designer put together that'll give you a good picture of what this plan, how this plan has materialized. And then I'll turn it over to Mattie Scott for her remarks.
Freedom West, a great location in the city of San Francisco. There's abundant access by bus, BART, bike, and on foot. All around, there are shops, restaurants, cultural activities, parks, sports fields, and open spaces of all sizes. Octavia Street is especially important now that the Central Freeway is gone. By demolishing something designed to get people through the local area, the Central Freeway, we can now concentrate on something that connects the local area, Octavia Street. We'd like to recreate Octavia Street at Freedom West to reconnect this important axis in the city to Jefferson Park and to draw people, activity, and identity to the center of the Freedom West neighborhood. This place, Freedom West 2.0, will allow people to arrive right at the center of the site, with relocated bus stops to serve this community and to provide a front porch for Jefferson Park. Here is an image looking down McAllister Street to the march of trees that tie together the north and south Octavia squares, along with a generous pedestrian crossing that helps keep the neighborhood unified. We've also located shops and cafe restaurants at this main arrival point along McAllister and draw a new urban square up and down Octavia. This lets Freedom West become a major catalyst in the Fillmore revival. If we hover over Jefferson Park and look south, we can see the new development of all these residential units over those new ground floor activities. And here, front and center, are the two co-op buildings, Co-op A on the right and Co-op B on the left. Where currently you have 382 homes and no activities, there'll be an additional 2,000 homes and over 60,000 square feet of retail and commercial ground floor uses. A hotel facing back into the Civic Center is also being considered. The other major gain here is turning all of these existing surface parking lots into open space by providing the parking below. All in all, a more positive use of the land. Here is that new front porch for Jefferson Park. The space between the two buildings is a new Octavia Square that will be outwardly focused throughout. But here at the north side, between the co-op's two buildings, it has the flexibility to be closed off, discrete gates so that it can become a community gathering space. This street will normally be open and active to create street life and the security that comes with an occupied space, but it will still be owned by the co-op and will be under the enhanced security system of the whole of Freedom West. In addition, along Golden Gate is a new innovation center that is situated here to be outwardly focused and also along Octavia to face into the community. This is an opportunity to look to the future through social and economic empowerment, to ensure a legacy of self-reliance and economic sustainability through STEM-focused workforce and entrepreneur development training, and access to financing for small businesses. All this is designed to be the gold standard for how to redevelop in an existing community in a way that honors and maintains the strength of the community and provides an economically stable platform for the community to explore and thrive for generations to come.
And I'm going to bring Mattie up and have her speak to the two components about the importance of the economic sustainability for the community, how hard she negotiated to beat up Victor McFarlane to get him to not only get those guiding principles in place, but as you can see here, one of the things that we did, we negotiated with McFarlane Partners that a part of that economic sustainability would be that we would, the co-op, Freedom West, would earn a 15% profit participation in all of the market development, or excuse me, the market rate portion of the development. And then of course you heard the comment about the Innovation Center, which will be key relative to being able to empower the residents and the entire community with 21st century jobs and entrepreneurship. So I'll turn it over to not only the president, but my neighborhood mom. I grew up under Mattie's leadership as the neighborhood mom when I was there. And so it's my honor to introduce you to Mattie Scott. Mattie.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us, giving us your time to share this incredible dream and vision that we've had for many years. My hats off first to um, Reverend J.S.O. Hall, who had the vision of creating this wonderful community of diversity, of working class families, who wanted to keep their children in the schools in their neighborhood, go to work every day, and be part of this vibrant community in San Francisco that we all love so very much. Um, and I'm excited because I've raised my children here in Freedom West. As Landon stated, he's one of our neighborhood children who benefited from growing up in Freedom West, a community that was thriving for better opportunities for families and to build diversity and economic empowerment at the same time. We had the dream, keeping the dream alive, and wanting our young children to thrive. And being centrally located is so important where we're located in Freedom West. And I used to dread living in Freedom West back in the day because of where we were located. There was so much disparity and so much poverty, and we were there to help, mobilize the community and give them hope and give them a vision. Mayor London Breed used to come down and play in Freedom West, and she always loved our playgrounds and how it was structured. So now here we are, 40 years later, and this vision that we have for Freedom West, we had a revenue, as you saw, of $2 million a month. That's going to skyrocket to $616 million for us. So with that type of revenue, we'll be able to do some fabulous things in Freedom West to maintain our lifestyle, to create more opportunities for folks. With 20,000 square foot of retail space, our innovation center is the most fabulous thing of all that I love. Having a center there to equip and prepare young people, our future generation, and our elders like me, with technology to keep up with today's technology and with jobs that will, sustain them so that they'll be able to stay in San Francisco. In addition to the additional housing, as you know, San Francisco has a huge shortage on housing. So we will be able to help with that. And I'm very proud of that. That was one of our first things to, do, is to develop and increase more housing in the city, because we know that the city is suffering with that, and that families could come back and, stay in San Francisco rather than having to commute 2 hours a day, having our firefighters and our police officers, those who, for emergency purposes, need to live in the city, but can no longer afford to live in the city. So Freedom West is going to bring a lot of opportunities, a lot of jobs for people. Not only just, it's not going to benefit us. We was looking for something that was going to benefit the whole city and help us create not just sustainability for us, but for our city, and to increase housing, the housing shortage that we face in San Francisco. At the same time, providing jobs, economic empowerment, sustainability for the next 50 years with revenue to create more jobs and allow 20,000 square foot of retail space to bring back some of the businesses that was lost, as Landon spoke of in the Fillmore. We have several people that have businesses that live there. They would love to have their businesses on site there at Freedom West, and we're looking forward to that. So we're very excited about it. I'm so grateful to Victor McFarlane and McFarlane Partners and everybody who's involved in this, because the spirit is to definitely give the residents what we wanted. We were, to have a developer, we've had many developers at the table, and believe you me, we've not had anyone like Victor McFarlane. Everything was to be sold to them, and, them doing what they wanted to do, not what us not having a voice. This experience is something that we've been looking for a long time, and I'm sure Reverend Hall is definitely going to appreciate, and all the families in Freedom West, because we as a residents were heard loud and clear, and we presented our plan to him, and to be able to, have a place to stay while this is being done and maintain the same amount of carrying charges that we pay is just unimaginable. And at the same time, to share the 15% profit of everything that's being built, and everything that's being built on Freedom West will be titled Freedom West. So we're very proud and so grateful to Victor McFarlane and McFarlane Partners and Landon Taylor for remembering where he lived and loving his neighborhood, you know, like he does. And I'm just so grateful and thankful to him and Victor and everybody that's on board with this project. Everyone's going to love it, and we're looking forward to it. And we hope that you are too. So thank you.
Thanks, Mattie. Well, before I turn it over to Victor, he'll share the highlights of the project from the real estate perspective. I do want to just say that picking the right development partner was critical. If I could just be very direct, this is a community that's been taken advantage of and hurt so often. That's why I shared the history about what happened, back in the 60s and 70s. And then even over the course of the last 20 years, there's been many people who've come and tried to take advantage. And so selecting the right partner who not only has the background and the history of building successful projects in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, right across in Emeryville, but having the heart and being around the purpose to be able to stick with it and achieve these guiding principles was critical. And so with that being said, I want to turn it over to Victor McFarlane. Victor.
Thanks, Landon and Mattie, for the nice words. I appreciate it. That after you beat me up, now I get the nice words.
I'll even be willing to share slides for you if you want to use the slide. See how nice I am? So
yeah. Well, I think you should put up that slide, Landon, that shows the entire project.
You got it.
Talked a little bit about, you've heard a little bit about the history of how this came to be. And so you had essentially 4 city blocks that had low density housing on it, 382 units, which doesn't make a lot of sense in an urban setting. You would expect more density. And if you look at the neighborhood, you would expect that over time, other projects will be redeveloped and you will get more density. So this is kind of setting the groundwork and the path for that future progress and future densification. So because the zoning basically hasn't been touched for 50 years, we basically are looking at this as a PUD, a whole cloth approach to one urban development vision that we worked our way through with the community. I mean, I think the key thing that you probably should have picked up on by now, and the reason I'm last, is this is a community-driven project. They're totally involved. I mean, they've toured my projects in Los Angeles to understand what they're going to get. They've negotiated to maintain their same square footage, but beyond all that, and so those 2 key buildings in which they're going to own and be in for a long time, I think that the key difference from this project versus many other projects that needs have an affordability component to it, as this does, is that they never look beyond getting the project up. That's part of the problem of what happened with the original development. They got it up, but how are you going to maintain it? How are you going to manage it? What programs do you have to sustain it? So the key component of our negotiations over the past year or 18 months, whatever it's been, have been focused on sustainability and economic sustainability of the community and how it goes about. So, so when people say, why aren't you building more? I mean, we want to make something that 515 units sustainable forever. And that's the model that we put in place. As you might imagine, a project in San Francisco, which costs almost $1 million, that's $500 million, $500 million of development costs. So the financing component has been a challenge. We have a plan for it, but it's not done yet. And then, if you look at those 2 buildings adjacent to that, if we consider that the north side, there are 2 market rate projects on each wing of that project. And then on the south side, obviously much more market rate development. Key component here is that the north side, when we move, if you remember, all 4 blocks right now are occupied. So on the north side, we will be taking down the units on that side all at once we have financing and everything in place. And then we have, as what Mattie was alluding to, is we have agreed that we will set people up in San Francisco in good or better apartments for the 3-year development period, and then move them back. And then also the people who are remaining on the south side will move in, and that's when so this is basically a 2-phase development, the north side first, and then the south side after the existing residents of the co-op move in. Landon, you might point out where the innovation center is going to be, which is as part of the overall economic stability. The innovation center, I think is a powerful tool that we're going to use, one, to educate the community, existing community, as well as the broader community. And Landon's nonprofit that he founded has a lot of expertise in this area. So we're delighted that we can add this to the makeup so that this is a comprehensive approach to community enrichment.
I would just show you this slide that has all of the community, all the residents will get the opportunity immediately to plug into this initiative that is designed to train 100,000 students and early career stage adults with an emphasis on women and people of color in the fastest growing, highest paying, and greatest opportunity for wealth industries that you see. We call them the next frontier industries, 100,000 by 2030. These are also the industries that are, least represented by people of color. And so I think what's important there is that the city shared with us stats that the average income in the Fillmore community is $40,000 a year. Let me repeat that, $40,000 a year. How do you live in San Francisco on $40,000 a year? You don't. And so being able to connect the residents and the surrounding community to the types of jobs and entrepreneurship that connects them with real 21st century income earning capabilities, that's the other component of the long-term sustainability. So back to you, Victor.
Yeah, and then do you have that Octavia Green slide, Landon?
I don't think I do.
Okay. Right now, you can put back up that slide. Octavia is not a pass-through facility. There's a park on the north side. One of the things that we're doing is we're opening up Octavia, at least on the south side, and then creating a greenway and path parkway that you can access the park. And so we're creating, hopefully this will become the Octavia Green area. We'll have some history, we'll have coffee shops, we'll have people who can meander down to the park and change the whole viewpoint of how it exists right now. And then of course we have the major McAllister Street, that's where we put most of the density there, and on Golf, the most density. Other than that, I mean, I think we can, Ethan, open it up for questions if there are any.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to thank all three of you for walking everybody through the project. It's just fascinating and inspiring to see how you've worked out this deal, and just the vision for this plan is just to think about how game-changing this is, not just for the residents, but for everyone who lives in the area, all the kind of amenities that we'll bring. I do want to open it up for questions. So I see one question came in on the Q&A. Feel free to use the Q&A or the chat functions, but I want to take moderator's prerogative and just start with a few questions of my own. So first, I'm just curious, kind of what's the current status of the project in terms of approvals? I mean, where are you at? Do you have all the permits you need, or are there additional policy needs that you have right now in pushing the project forward?
We are certainly not done. I mean, in our 2-year schedule, we're probably 6 months into our entitlements process. We're heavily into the community engagement and portion of it, but we have submitted a plan to the city.
And if you had a wish list of policy change or policy support at this point, is there anything on it?
Yeah, it's a long wish list. I mean, some of the wishes have already been granted. The engagement by the city, in all my years of development, this is the best I've ever seen. We have ongoing engagement every couple of weeks with the city planners and whatnot. Approach by the supervisors and the approach and the engagement from our neighbors has all been excellent. We're not done with that process, but it's extraordinarily encouraging right now. We still, we need certain things that the city doesn't have right now, but we hope that they will have with new legislation or other approaches. I mean, for example, we need more Section 8 vouchers to help make this happen, but right now the city doesn't have them. So we have to help them have them. So that's one of the challenges that we picked up. I mean, we have grants. I mean, to make this project work, we have a grant allocation, that I'm happy to say Landon is focused on raising. So there are many, many, many components as you get down to nitty gritty that we have a plan for them and we have backup plans, but in the meantime, we're still just going through that process. So financing is my biggest concern, and partially the financing for the buildings themselves, but even more importantly for the long-term economic sustainability.
And on that point, I see a question came in on the chat from Andre, who asks if it will be financed using a land lease or sale leaseback function as a P3.
The buildings under we're buying the land for the market rate units, which will help support the development, but it's only a relatively small component of it. There are subsidies that we're requesting for the affordable units, as we talked about before in Section 8. The land underneath the Freedom West Home buildings will be owned by Freedom West Homes.
And I'm going to go to the Q&A chat here because a lot of questions are coming in here. So first of all, Marisha just asked, what's the timeline for completion here? You mentioned you're 6 months into the entitlement process, and then it sounds like a 3-year construction period. Is that basically where you're at in terms of timeline?
That's correct. So if we're successful in getting 2 years done, which will be an extraordinarily fast pace for San Francisco, then we'll immediately start construction. It's probably 2.5 to 3 years, but we're using 3 years, so no one gets mad at me.
So that would put us in thinking about finishing up the entitlement by 2022, end of 2022, and then looking to open around 2025, 2026. Would that be right then?
2025, yeah.
Great. Let's see, another question from Marisha, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Have you given thought to a builder's apprenticeship for the construction phase of it?
We have. One of the key things that we are focused on is that this is also a demonstration project on the development and construction side for in terms of how to have inclusion and diversity. So there will be programs for women and minority to participate in this and apprenticeship programs as well.
Yeah.
And,
Ethan,
go ahead, Lynn.
Follow up on connecting two things that you mentioned that you wanted us to mention about the wish list. One of the biggest things that Victor talked about in terms of our challenge is making sure that the financing model works. And $500 million in construction costs. A part of that budget is a $25 million grant raise that we're focused on, that we think really has a key opportunity when we look at this project to really be appealing to impact investors, impact foundations, and others, because of, to your point earlier about this being perhaps a duplicatable model, not only in San Francisco, but other places, around the country. I want to highlight one thing and make sure I do what Mattie asked, which is to share this, 2.5 minute a video that kind of gives the answer to this. It's not, in terms of sustainability and why we think this is a model to repeat other places, and why we think that corporations and others would be interested, is that this will not only solve for affordable housing, but it solves for the economic equity that needs to be solved for in the city of San Francisco, the division of the have and have-nots, and creating that sustainability for people of color and other underserved. So the plug-in, you asked about apprenticeships. One of the persons asked about apprenticeships. We're not only looking at apprenticeships on the building side, but to create this pathway, I'm going to show you, with permission, Ethan, a 3-minute video that highlights what we're going to be doing. I want everybody to think about the power of what residents in the community will experience when they plug into this Next Frontier initiative of creating jobs and entrepreneurship. So I'm going to play this now. Here we go.
You got to be comfortable being who you are. That is your superpower. Nobody can be a better you than you can. And I think about my experience growing up as a Black man, it has uniquely prepared me to do what I'm doing today. I guarantee you that your experience has prepared you for what it is you want to do in your life.
Hi, welcome to the Next Frontier Conference at Expo 2020.
The Next Frontier initiative is designed to accelerate 100,000 on their pathway to what we call Next Frontier industries, which include data analytics, fintech, aerospace, life sciences, and more. And the way we do that is to provide you with access, awareness, and belief.
John Young walked on the moon. John Young said, Leland, you should probably become an astronaut. I said, man, if a guy who walked on the moon said I can become an astronaut, maybe I can do it. So sometimes you need that mentor, because sometimes you don't believe it in yourself.
You can see how successful these leaders are and know that personally, you have a pathway to achieve that success. But that's why we're here.
We're here because we care about you, because we want to help you. Build a network of people that will support you. We are your network. Use us.
I'm from the South Los Angeles area. Growing up, it was very hard for me to look around in my neighborhood and see possible outcomes that I could be. But I had to put myself out of my comfort zone, take myself out of my situation. And I learned that through Base 11.
What I really want folks to understand is it is scary, but you want to get over that, become really good at something. And as soon as you master something, you can get over your fears.
Say yes at the door. If an opportunity arises, do not second guess yourself. Say, yes, I can do that, and then figure it out, because you can.
When I look in the mirror, I see strength, I see determination, and I see exactly what an engineer is, despite what I look like.
Get built up so you never have to worry about being puffed up. By built up, I mean getting that early foundation in knowledge, work hard every day, come correct in the rain and the shine. We can all come correct in the shine. You are a person of character when you can still come correct and smile in the rain. If you focus this time on getting built up in STEM, you will never, ever have to worry about being puffed up.
Personally, there's no benefit in being successful if you can't help other people. Success to me is really about helping people. It's about giving back. And I've been blessed to achieve a level of success, but not for myself. It's really so that I can have an impact on other people's lives. And that's what I try to do every single day.
So that last gentleman is the president of Thermo Fisher Life Sciences, and they committed to hiring 500 African Americans into their life science business in the next 3 years. So imagine the residents in that Fillmore community, whether it be JP Morgan, Thermo Fisher, Coinbase is coming in. The idea would be to have the residents be able to plug in immediately to those opportunities, so that we can now bridge the gap and kind of change the trajectory of the community there, and really now bring all walks of life together. Instead of it being so segregated, bring all walks of life together so you can have an integrated community for economic empowerment.
Yeah, I think that model is so fascinating. I mean, it's so much bigger than just retail and housing. And Mattie, you had mentioned specifically about the Innovation Center being something that really grabbed you. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that, and also in your position as president of the board of directors of the co-op, what resonated with residents? I mean, when you had to go to them for approval for this plan, so I'm wondering how the Innovation Center factored into that, and just generally what you heard from residents in terms of their concerns or hopes for the redevelopment.
Well, yeah, what we heard from residents, particularly our young people, you know, I'm a grandmother now. I'm about to be a great grandmother today. My daughter-in-law is in labor right now as we speak.
Congrats.
And I'm so excited about that. But the educational model to prepare our young people for the future, you know, we have teachers that had students, and one of the teachers said, you know, she had gone to a classroom and here was 12-year-olds and 8-year-olds that already was learning, had a computer lab in front of them in their classroom. And she was the teacher. Matter of fact, it was Commissioner Cheryl Davis, as a matter of fact. And in that classroom, those kids, you know, here's a Black teacher teaching at a private school, and there's 12-year-olds already accessing what she just now learning, you know, as a teacher herself. And then going back to our community, no one had a computer or laptop. You know, no one knew the language or even had a keyboard. And so the Innovation Center brings so much hope to a generation that almost have been left behind. And this is going to propel and prepare our children who want this so badly, particularly their parents and their grandparents. And so the Innovation Center is what really, one of the major features that really sold a lot of residents, on top of Victor McFarlane and all that, his compassion and his heart for us to succeed with this plan was really the key factors here. We weren't just thinking about Freedom West, we were thinking about San Francisco, period. And our children and across our nation, as you can see the current, what's going on, you know, with housing and development across our country, the disparities speak for themselves, the statistics, you know, they speak for themselves. And so we were losing so many children to violence and other things. And this is going to be, you know, that dream that we all hoped for and wanted. It's so bad for our children, you know, so we can get them prepared for the future so they can be able to take care of their families. That's the number one thing. If you ask every young man, a young person that want to succeed, the first thing they say, I want to be able to buy my mom a house. I want to be able to send my child to college. That's just first two things come out of their mouth: education and buying mom a house. Every basketball player, every superstar, first two things, that's what they say: education and be able to have a lifestyle that's affordable and sustainable. That's what people want. That's the American dream. That's the American dream we all want and we deserve. You know, so I see this as a model for not just San Francisco, but for the whole country right now. And what better medicine that we need than a Freedom West 2.0, not just for San Francisco, but for our whole nation right now.
That's great. Well, and congratulations on the impending birth. That's great news too. Appreciate you being on here, particularly given that circumstance. But I want to go just back to the questions here, because we got a couple similar questions here from Andre and Scott. And first of all, Scott says, fantastic and inspiring project. And he wanted to know specifically if you've explored using mass timber construction to improve sustainability and the speed of construction, particularly that you have the Innovation Center and advanced manufacturing. And he also notes, given how communities of color have suffered the brunt of so much of the world pollution, that using mass timber could be an interesting statement potentially, as well as a practical option potentially. And also Andre asks a somewhat similar question about mass timber, but also if you've considered modular construction as well.
We have looked at mass timber, not just on this project, but on others. You know, the architects are still looking at that, and if it makes sense and is affordable, yeah, we would absolutely do it. But we haven't made a final decision on that yet. And then modular, I mean, almost everything we build these days is componentized to some degree. fully modular. No decision been made around that, but it might be difficult based upon the size of the units and the specificity of the units that we've agreed to provide to the Freedom and West Homes residents. But we'll definitely be looking at it. I think anything that would reduce the cost and reduce the amount of subsidy that this project needs will be considered.
Great. All right. Well, I appreciate that. And then a question about potential opposition to the project. I know you've done a lot of community outreach, but San Francisco is famous for nobody agreeing on anything when it comes to land use, and the local rules do empower even just one or two residents potentially to hold up a project if they don't like it for any reason. So I'm just wondering kind of what you've heard in terms of opposition, if any at this point, if it's surfaced, and if so, what some of the concerns might be.
Well, I'll speak to first internally. Our first goal was to get 1,000 residents on board. Right, there's 382 units that represents about 1,000 before even going external, and we did this in the middle of a pandemic. So we needed to educate, outreach into a community where, again, there's a lack of trust. And so we literally, because we couldn't meet in person, we purchased or obtained tablets for every single resident, because many people who are even seniors don't have internet and didn't have access to a computer. So we needed to first make sure that the outreach to the community. And I'll tell you that there was even some opposition. I mean, ultimately, it was approved by a 2-to-1 margin, but there was some opposition where some families just, don't want change, or don't trust, or feel fine themselves and don't want change. So we had some opposition internally. We were able to get over it and obtain success. Externally, with the community, we've not had a lot. We've been doing all of our outreach. I think everyone sees this as a very special project. Naturally, of course, there's going to be a discussion about parking. We've heard that. And naturally, there's going to be people who want more affordable. We've heard, that. But that's been the extent of it so far. I'll toss it to Victor for more of the, traditional real estate. My comments are about the community, but I'll toss it to Victor about the real estate piece.
Yeah, I agree with what Landon said. I mean, I think parking has been the primary real estate issue that has come up in terms of wanting to see less parking. So that will be an ongoing conversation. It is already it's a greatly reduced amount of parking already, but when you're talking about something that's 2,400 units, obviously, even a reduced amount of parking is still a fair amount.
And I would just note that the Council of Infill Builders are actually sponsoring legislation from Assemblymember Friedman, AB 1401, that would eliminate local requirements for parking, local parking minimums. So for any of you interested in that parking issue in particular, statewide legislation that the council is supporting, along with Spur based in San Francisco and California.
I think that's a good decision.
Sounds like we got your support then, Victor. Appreciate that. And Mattie, Landon just mentioned that this had to be a sell to the residents. What did you hear from your neighbors? What concerns were they raising about this project?
Well, our neighbors really are ready for change. We see what's happening all around us. We see the neighborhood changing and progressing, and we were at a standstill. We couldn't repair the property. It was the cost alone would outweigh, our $2 million. We couldn't do that. So we had to come up with a plan that was going to benefit the residents, the seniors, at the same time, make sure that everybody will come back. All the things that you saw in the presentation, those are, non-negotiables. And that was most important to us as shareholders. And then our neighbors, the churches, the stores, the community itself. We're meeting with them, as Landon said. Everybody is excited about this project, particularly the faith community, because they've lost a lot of their members. Their members have to commute to come to church. Hopefully they won't when this is done. And we're meeting with neighborhoods and residents to share the vision with them. And so far, we've had nothing but thumbs up on just about every issue. And our shareholders want this so badly, and we're so grateful, as I said, to be able to have McFarlane Partners develop us. And at the same time, we're able to get what we want out of it, remain affordable, look to have an innovation center. I mean, all the pluses is just incredible. And so we see it as a win-win, not just for Freedom West, not for just for our children and our seniors, but for everybody and for our city. And hopefully to be a great model for the nation, because our nation needs this right now.
Well,
I have to say it's hats off to Mattie and the rest of the board and to Landon for getting through the process. I mean, I think the other key things is we took our time. We didn't rush it. Landon, how many meetings did we have?
Total of 50 between town halls and shareholder roundtables and virtual and in-person small group sessions led by the board members, were just about 50 meetings that we had.
Yeah,
and meeting every Tuesday.
The board was meeting all the time. I mean, so we put in the time, to deal with, you have to think about the fact that many of these residents don't have financial or economic backgrounds. When you start talking about something that costs $500 million, they're wondering, how do we pay for this? How do you, so walking them through the economic plan, step by step, and sometimes 3 or 4 times, but because of that process, they developed, and the trust that they had in Mattie and the board and Landon, and I think gained over time with me. That's how we got through the process. And that's the same approach we're taking around. First to recognize, as Landon said, 1,000 people, their community on 4 blocks, this is what they want. Now, you adjacent people, tell me what your problems are. We'll explain to you what we're doing, but you tell me what your problems are. We'll try to incorporate it, but we're going.
Well, it's a fantastic project. I think a wonderful model, particularly just the community-based engagement and outreach, I think is a real important lesson to think about for other communities, cities who need to redevelop. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to thank all 3 of you for joining. So Victor McFarlane, Chairman and CEO of McFarlane Partners, Mattie Scott, President of the Freedom West Board of Directors, and Landon Taylor, co-founder of Legacy First Partners and lead advisor to Freedom West Homes Corporation. Thank you, all 3 of you, so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And thank you to the audience for listening in. I also want to say a couple quick thank yous to my colleagues who helped get this going. So first of all, to Terry Watt and Marilee Hansen on the Council of Infill Builders for organizing this. And I also want to thank Monica Sue of McFarlane Partners for behind the scenes coordination. And finally, Alan Matkins, Dana Palmer, partner there, Molly Crossland, and Teresa Pham, who are all so instrumental in organizing this today. And of course, to the Council of Infill Builders for this very first Lunch and Learn series. We hope you tune in for future events in this program. You can sign up at councilofinfillbuilders.org to get on the mailing list or to become a member. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.